I know that I said in my last puppet related video that I was going to show off animating that puppet. And you know, I did do that. I animated it. Here's the walk cycle that I made, but I never showed it and I never made a video because I got crazy busy. And instead, I made another one. This one I made during the summer because I planned to make it in preparation for a class that I was taking in the fall that was a primarily puppet animation class. And I had to run it by my professor before the class, so once I finished it, like a proud parent sending their child to preschool for the first time, I sent that zip file of the project to my professor and waited to see if it was approved for the class. It was not approved. And I was, you know, only a little bit devastated by this news, but it wasn't without feedback. My professor sent back a zip file and a few short explanations of what I needed to fix before it would have been usable for the assignments. And in short, when I opened that zip file, it looked like this. Horrifying. Absolutely. I realized when I was making the turnaround, every body part that I was drawing that I thought, yeah, whatever, I can reuse this piece by flipping it with the same drawing substitution, was the worst mistake I could have possibly made. But I really had no time to fix it before the class started, and I didn't really know how to fix it without further guidance from my professor, so I accepted that defeat and I used the rigs that were provided for the class. And I also, during that time, asked my professor for a little bit of extra feedback. They were super gracious and kind in explaining to me how I could fix it once the quarter was over and I could really focus in on it during the break, because the rest of my classes, until my break, would then put me through the horrors. I don't wish all studio classes on anyone. Doing that much drawing in that short period of time will break your hand, and every time I felt a twinge acting up in my fingers, it was terrifying because carpal tunnel is every artist's worst nightmare. Would not recommend. Stretch, take care of your hands. Here was my game plan on fixing this puppet. I was gonna start from fresh with the views, delete everything past the first frame, and get rid of anything that had animate flip on it, because that was causing all the problems in the first place. Additionally, fixing envelope deformers and adding envelope deformers to anything that didn't currently have one. A lot of stuff related to the face and the eyes. There's still a few things that I need to fix in the face, but I am happy where it is at this point. I also needed to make mouth shapes and, you know, rig the mouth, because lip sync. And this was a smaller detail, but I realized I also had planned on adding a circle under the neck, so that if I wanted to lean the puppet forward, you could see the color of the chest underneath the sweater for a little bit of added dimension. And after all this was done, I really wanted to prove that this thing worked, so I made a short animation to go along with it with a composited layout and such for a little portfolio piece. So here's the time-lapse of me doing just that. I started off fixing the views, and that was relatively straightforward after I figured out how to do it, but it definitely was tedious because I didn't learn how to rig puppets this way. Whenever the puppet needed to be flipped, or a piece needed to be flipped, I just duplicated the drawing into a separate drawing substitution and flipped the artwork that way instead of animate flipping it, which are two separate things. Animate flipping it doesn't affect the original artwork. Flipping the artwork is, you know, what it says, flipping the artwork. So this way, in the timeline, the computer won't interpret the flipped drawing as something that needs to be, like, computer interpolated between, and that's why it gets flat and tries to, like, flip as if it's a 3D object. Instead, it will just switch to the next drawing substitution, which makes a much cleaner look to the turnaround. Similarly with the deformers, I went through and made sure everything was cleaner, just went through and adjusted a lot of things, and because I was making all of these new drawing substitutions for the pieces of the puppet, I also needed to add deformation chains to fit the specific drawings that I was making. So to make a new deformation chain, you select whatever artwork you are editing and adding a deformation to, and in the top right corner there is a button that you can click that's like add deformation chain, just like that. And then off to the right of it in the drop down, you can also switch between the different deformations. When you go into your node view, it will all compress into one group. Eventually, I got to the point where everything was pretty much fixed up. It was just a lot of tedious moving pieces around to make sure that it fit the original turnaround artwork that I made. But with this new method of mostly just moving the new drawing substitution pieces. Or if you wanted to, you could also just deform a more like neutral shaped object to be whatever like arm piece or leg piece that you wanted. But because Pluto's legs are just so specific, I decided to opt for drawing substitutions rather than trying to deform the leg into different shapes like that. And the next part was rigging the mouth, which was its own beast, and I still need to fix it because I'm evil and I forgot my character's tooth gap. Anyway, rigging the mouth was mostly a task of figuring out how to create something that could also be usable from a side view, because I did not want to have to do the method of animating mouths where you redraw basically every type of phoneme that you could possibly want in different kinds of expressions. I just didn't want to have to deal with that. So I did more of the method that a lot of other rigs use, which is just to like rig the mouth entirely. You make the lips so that they have deformations around them and you can make the mouth move in more nuanced ways, and just gives you more control over things. And one of the big hurdles for that was trying to figure out how to make this mouth work in profile, because it needed to have basically a cutout where the side of, you'd be able to see through the side of the mouth. And that was an involved process of masking things together on different layers. And here is the setup that my mouth ended up taking on. I used a lot of the methods that this lose rig had, which was very helpful because I had also been animating that puppet for class, so I pretty much knew how it worked. I might make a little short if people are interested in seeing like more in depth how this mouth functions, but it's kind of a little bit complicated to explain. My process is honestly very similar to tying down a rough animation. I treat this more like tie downs than actually finalizing any ideas for movement, just because you really, with Puppet, want to get all of the rough ideas out first. Make your rough animation as clean as possible so that you're not like trying to come up with anything with the puppet, because that's how you get stiff movement, at least in my experience. So I go through and I block in all of my keyframes, and then I pose out the breakdowns. And I would say one of the biggest tips for animating with a puppet is that you want to start moving your puppet from the top of your hierarchy. So say you want to make this keyframe, you want to move the whole puppet over first, and then move the upper body before you move the head, before you move the arm, and so on. And this is because you could very easily start messing up your puppet's pivots if you start moving things out of order, and then you will very much regret it down the line when you want to rotate something and you realize, oh no, it's no longer in its correct pivot spot, and then you'll have to go back and fix it or take a different spot on the timeline and fix the keyframe there. It just gets tedious after a while. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward, I would say. For the in-betweens, this is when the motion tweening tool comes in handy, because although you never really want to just leave a frame exactly how the motion tweening makes it, it's a good starting point to finesse movement while also saving time. That's why the reason why you want to alter it also is because the computer can't really calculate arcs or spacing in a nuanced way. That's all the sparkle that you're gonna bring to the animation. And after that, my final pass is really emphasizing offset movement. and anything that has follow through, so I focus a lot on the hair and anything that's flowing. And after all of that, here was my finished piece. And this is not a compositing video, so I'm not really going to go in depth on how I composited any of this, but I used After Effects, and here were some of the resources that I used, because I'm still very new to After Effects and compositing. But yeah, these are really good videos that you should go check out if you are looking to try and composite 2D animation. And there's a lot of stuff to do with like exporting PNG sequences, I'm realizing. So when you're exporting your PNG sequences for your puppet, just know that you're gonna want to split it up depending on if you have like foreground elements or things going in front and behind. Just be aware of how your puppet is layered and how you want to export everything so that when you import it into After Effects, it all layers on top of each other correctly. I definitely had some problems with that when I was first trying to do it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I have more things planned for the future, and if you want to follow me outside of YouTube, I am decently active on Instagram and Tumblr. So yeah, go make some cool shit and take care of yourselves. See ya!